Hi, Wayne Bryan here. Thanks for joining us for another Flashback Friday. This time we're looking at Music Theater Wichita's 2018 season opener, Sister Act, a very funny musical, which came from the mind of a very funny guy named Paul Rudnick, who writes wonderful stories and screenplays. Paul Rudnick had the idea that Bette Midler ought to star in a movie about a gangster's moll who sees a killing, has to go into hiding, and ends up in a nunnery. For the New Yorker magazine, he wrote a really funny story about how the idea came to him and how the whole process fell apart. This is really, really funny reading. Go to Google, type in Paul Rudnick, Fun with Nuns, New Yorker. You won't be sorry. It's a great little read for the holiday weekend. Anyway, the film came to pass, but Bette Midler decided she didn't want to wear a wimple in a movie, so it went to Whoopi Goldberg, who certainly made the role her own. The movie was made for $30 million. It took in $230 million. So naturally, a sequel was quickly made. Sequel's not so good, but the original film is delightful. The original film uses authentic 1980s songs. So when they decided to turn it into a stage musical, it would have been really easy to turn it into a jukebox musical and use familiar tunes. But no, they hired Alan Menken and Glenn Slater to create all new songs in that style. Alan Menken's music had been heard on Broadway in Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid, but this would be the first score he actually wrote for Broadway. Well, it was a very successful show, and we were delighted when we got the rights to do it in 2018. Really, really proud of our production. It was wonderfully directed by Mark Madama. He got all the humor and all the heart. And it was wonderfully choreographed by Robert Hartwell, a former company member who's now a Broadway guy. And it had a great, great cast. Shonica Gooden played Dolores, the main character. Shonica had been in the Broadway ensembles of Cinderella and Hamilton and had played Rumpelteazer in the Broadway revival of Cats. But this was her first starring role, and she's terrific. She went on to do several more starring roles around the country, Memphis, and she's also been on the NBC TV show Manifest. Opposite her was Katie Banks as the Mother Abbess. Katie grew up in El Dorado, went to Broadway with Phantom of the Opera, decided to raise her family here. We're so glad. And she was such a good Mother Abbess, we had her stick around another year and be Mother Abbess in The Sound of Music this past summer. The bad guy was played by one of the nicest guys ever, Kolby Kindle. And since then, he's been pretty much touring the world in Come From Away. The good guy, Sweaty Eddie, was played by Lawrence Cummings, who is so terrific, but then he was equally terrific later that summer as Sebastian the Crab in The Little Mermaid. The three henchmen who are not so good at being henchmen are played by Chris Clark, who's been touring the country starring in Escape to Margaritaville, Michael Dickagoros, who recently played in Joseph and the Dreamcoat at the Fireside Theater, and Justin Showell, who until recently was in the San Francisco cast of Hamilton. We can't wait to see what all these talented people are up to once we all get to performing again. The set was by Adam Koch. We purchased it from the Ogunquit Playhouse, but we liked working with Adam so much we had him come back the next year for The Sound of Music. The costumes were from the Main State Music Theater. And lighting was by David Neville, sound by David Muehl, and all the crazy hair by Danae Jimenez. We hope you enjoy these clips from Sister Act, and we hope if you haven't already bought tickets for Curtain Up, it's going to be a really fun, unique event next Friday night, May 29th. So don't hesitate, join us. And now on, if you'll push the button, you'll see some of the highlights from Sister Act.